Henry's Dream, recorded late 91, features only Bargeld and Harvey on guitar. A notable moment is Blixa's rare slide guitar solo on I Had a Dream, Joe. It's raucous, wild and harmonically random, but characteristically rhythmic and perfect for the song. This song is also a great simple illustration of what I was saying earlier about the way Blixa plays over chord changes. The verse goes G minor for 2 bars, then E flat, and D. But Blixa just plays a G5 over the whole thing. That kind of makes the E flat chord an E flat major 7 and the D chord a D11. Now, I know this approach is not unique. It's always been a huge go-to for session guitarists. It's a great way of adding harmonic depth without departing from the key or without crowding vocals or riffs and other melodies. But Blixa's intensely commanding rhythm makes this style all his own. It's not just locked in, it's kind of relentless, kind of fervent. A quick note at this juncture. When Nick performed I Had a Dream, Joe on Letterman in '92, he was backed by the late night house band. The only bad seed present was Mick Harvey dutifully strumming his acoustic in the background. So let's add late night house band guitarist Sid McGuinness to the list. Even though he butchered a tapped guitar solo all over Paul Schaefer's wild and honestly more fitting organ break. Back to Henry's Dream. The other thing this album contains is some of the least challenging guitar playing we've heard throughout Nick's career. Not least challenging to play, more like least challenging to the ear. You know, gone are Blixa's mechanical stabbing rhythms and mix against the grain chord progressions, and long gone are the flattened fifths and odd time signatures of the Birthday Party and the Boys Next Door. For instance, this is presumably Mick Harvey's acoustic guitar playing on When I First Came to Town. It's simple harmonically, it's unsyncopated, it's in standard tuning, it's not saturated in reverb, it doesn't have the treble wound up to 11 and the bass rolled back off. It's just the polar opposite of what originally enamoured Nick about his guitarists. I mean, it's beautiful, it's beautifully played, beautifully recorded, it's a beautiful song, but the evolution is vividly apparent. On St Patrick's Day in 1994, Nick joined Shane MacGowan and the Popes, not the Pogues, for a rendition of I Have Been a Rover at Clapham Grand in London. This means Nick shared the stage with Popes guitarist Paul Mad Dog McGuinness, and probably Mo O'Hagan and Leeson McKeith, I don't know. The Popes were formed by Shane MacGowan when he was sacked from the Pogues for a while. Mad Dog McGuinness was a roadie for the Pogues and occasionally filled in on guitar when Philip Chevron was unwell. 1994's Let Love In. Wow, we're back. This album contains one of the coolest and most cleverly recorded guitar parts in the entire canon. Listen to the muted staccato root notes of Red Right Hand. At first it doesn't even appear to be a guitar. It sounds like percussion played on some found instrument of some sort, like bed springs or something. But then you realise the notes are the open guitar strings, coupled with the same notes on the adjacent strings, like tuning a guitar. Now, I don't really know who played this part. Hang on, I'm going to say it. I don't really know who played this genius part. But it could have been Blixa based on some live clips that I've found. Whoever it is, it sits so perfectly opposite Martin P. Casey's perfect bass line. And the tone of Harvey's doubled guitar line that harmonises the organ figure is one of the sweetest dirty tones I've ever heard. while recording Do You Love Me and Red Right Hand, Blixa told producer Tony Cohen that it was the best guitar sound he'd ever had. The album's closing track, Do You Love Me Part 2, is a great opportunity to appreciate Blixa's guitar playing because he's the only player credited on the track and his twangy, trebly tone is just right up front in the mix. Also in '94, Nick took part in a project called September Songs, the music of Kurt Weill, where his rendition of Mac the Knife was backed by a jazz trio called Spanish Fly. Now, Spanish Fly are sensational. A trio, trumpet, tuba and guitar, distorted slide guitar. The guitarist is a New Yorker named David Tronzo, whose name I hadn't heard since marvelling at his flexi-disc recording in a 1990 issue of Guitar Player magazine, where he was voted second best experimental guitarist. I don't know who the first was, but this guy blew my mind. Like, how is this guy playing authentic but boundary-pushing bebop jazz lines on electric slide with distortion? Incredible. During the band's 1994 Lollapalooza stint, an English guitarist named James Johnston filled in for Blixa from July through to September. Also around this time, Nick was asked to record a song for the soundtrack to Batman Forever. There Is a Light is a high point on the album and features the first recording of Nick and James together. There's also a great live clip to be found on YouTube of James sharing guitar duties with Mick on Red Right Hand on US TV in August '94. In early '96, Nick's vocals graced a cover of his former bandmate Rowland S Howard's most enduring song Shivers, when it was recorded by an all-female Israeli group by the name of The Witches. The guitars, heavily distorted and whammy bar twanging, were excellently played by the group's frontwoman Inbal Perlmutter, whose short career was limited to a couple of releases due to being killed in a car accident at the age of 26. Around this time, Nick co-wrote and sang The Sweetest Embrace for Barry Adamson's solo release, Oedipus Schmedipus. This lilting habanera features understated nylon string playing by respected English classical guitarist Richard Hand. Also in '96, Nick contributed vocals to a song called All the Pretty Little Horses on an album by the same name by English experimental act Current 93. He was accompanied on guitar by the group's longtime instrumentalist Michael Cashmore. Michael Cashmore has a couple of interesting credits to his name, including Mark Armand, playing on Mark's Feasting with Panthers and Gabrielle and the Lunatic Lover. We're really racking up the names here. Michael Cashmore clocks in at a quarter ton. Clearly the mid-90s were a busy and fruitful time for Nick. He delivered lectures on songwriting at the School für Dichtung in Vienna. Selections of these lectures ended up as samples on an album credited to Nick, Allen Ginsberg and Falco. Nick's vocal grabs were set to music featuring the guitar playing of Ida, Christian Ida Hintze. I can't find out much about Ida. He was only on 2 other releases that I can locate and is listed as an Austrian poet rather than musician. But the chopped up results on this album are pretty cool nonetheless. Murder Ballads, 1996. Once again, Blixa and Mick are back with more delicate strumming and picking on classics like Where the Wild Roses Grow and Henry Lee, but I love Mick's purely percussive part on Stagger Lee. His unhinged solo/noise at the end. And Blixa's detuned blues fills on Crow Jane are pretty cool too. Great tones on this recording as well. By the way, the B-side of the Henry Lee single release was a cover of traditional murder ballad Knoxville Girl, and Cave's version is a great opportunity to hear James Johnston playing guitar, as his 2 acoustic parts are the only instrumentation present on the track. The Boatman's Call, 1997. Again, Mick and Blixa, but for me, this is a real Mick showcase. You know, his acoustic treatment of There Is a Kingdom, followed by his tender electric part on Are You the One That I've Been Waiting For, both demonstrate his beautiful touch, just some of his finest playing. And his double-tracked acoustics on West Country Girl are great fun too. No More Shall We Part, 2001. As Nick's albums became more piano and vocal ballads and those haunting high melodies became the domain of Warren Ellis's violin, there's less for us to talk about here. Aside from the slide guitar solo on Oh My Lord and some slashing and chopping on the outro of The Sorrowful Wife. Around this time, Nick sang on a song called To Be By Your Side from a soundtrack called Winged Migration. The guitars on this recording were played by a French bloke called Slim Pezan. Slim, or Andre as he was born, is a hugely recorded musician in his home country. But I'm an ignorant Aussie who's been to the Eiffel Tower once, although I did eat some snails and some cuisse de renouille. But sadly, I'm not familiar with most of the no doubt excellent artists he's recorded with, except for the wonderful Charles Aznavour.
He may be the face I can't...
Oh, and he played bass on a track from this little-known album. If you have kids or you're in your 20s, you may have heard him on Club Penguin at the summer party. Anyway, Slim Pezan has hundreds upon hundreds of credits if you're inclined to go and check him out. In 2002, Nick traded verses with the immortal Johnny Cash on So Lonesome I Could Cry from the fourth instalment of the wonderful Rick Rubin-produced American series. And who accompanied them on twin acoustic guitars? None other than heartbreaker Mike Campbell and one of my faves, Smokey Hormel. Mike Campbell, of course, best known for his work with Tom Petty on classics like this, and not to mention this non-Petty banger. But YouTube is full of interviews and breakdowns of this legend, so let me tell you about Smokey Hormel. I discovered Smokey when I was doing one of these deep dives on the guitarists of Tom Waits. Smokey showed up on Tom's brilliant mule variations. Here's what I said about him. Smokey Hormel was born in LA and learnt guitar from Jimmy Weibel, Benny Goodman's guitarist, who also taught Steve Lukather. Smokey has played with Beck, Johnny Cash, Neil Diamond, Norah Jones and Adele, and that's just dropping the big names. He's also played on stunning albums by the brilliant Yebba, the funky Bernie Worrell and the hazy Marianne Faithfull. You've heard him before. It's Smokey playing on Johnny Cash's haunting version of Hurt. He plays on Justin Timberlake's Future Sex Love Sounds album closer all over again. And he wrote Long Shadow with Joe Strummer for Johnny Cash to sing. Smokey joined Tom's band for the Get Behind the Mule tour. Check out his solo from their VH1 Storytellers appearance.
You got to get behind a mule.
There are a few clips around if you go digging. I found one where he plays a sweet solo on Who Are You This Time, live in Stockholm, 1999. After Johnny Cash's death in 2003, a huge collection of recordings called Unearthed was posthumously released. Nick appears on this collection as well, chiefly on side 3 where he's credited as providing backing vocals and duetting with Cash on Cindy. Now, here's something very interesting. Along with Cave being credited for backing vocals on side 3, we also have Tom Morello listed as playing guitar on the entire side. So, can we add Rage Against the Machine's trailblazing guitarist to our list? Well, in interviews, Tom only speaks of playing with Johnny Cash and Joe Strummer of The Clash on the album's cover of Bob Marley's Redemption song. And listening to this, there's no other backing vocals beyond Johnny's and Joe's. Similarly, when we listen to Nick's duet, Cindy, I can hear no plucking sounds that remind me of Tom Morello. So I think we have to put this one down to poor liner notes. Nocturama. It's not until track 5, Dead Man in My Bed, that a guitar string is struck in anger on 2003's Nocturama, but it's worth the wait. I mean, 4478, 4478. It's cool, very cool. And it just gets better when Blixa solos with what Wikipedia aptly terms inexplicable guitar. I quite like the chord movement on There Is a Town, but the point of note here is Blixa's contrasting guitar part, once again propelling the song with his powerful rhythmic presence. But around this time, Blixa decided he'd had enough. Nick tells the story in Hope and Carnage by Nick Cave and Sean O'Hagan. Blixa left after losing his patience when the Bad Seeds were filming a performance of a super upbeat version of I Feel So Good by J.B. Lenoir, inspired by the Muppets. After numerous takes, Blixa leaps to his feet, throws down his guitar and screams those immortal words, "I didn't get into rock and roll to play rock and roll." Just to be really annoying, I said, "What about the Muppets?" At which point he marched over to me and shouted, "Fuck the Muppets, you be a fucking Muppet." The next album, double barrel titled Abattoir Blues, The Lyre of Orpheus, features only Mick Harvey on guitar. And he is having a ball right from the opening track. He's rocking, clearly really enjoying the freedom of being able to play lead again. There's a wealth of great guitar parts on both these sides, an array of juicy tones, guitars on the edge of feedback. So many songs feature two distinct guitar parts panned left and right. I love things like this. On There She Goes, My Beautiful World, Mick is playing almost exactly the same notes, but in two very different ways, panned hard left and hard right. Hard left, we have this dirty honky blues riff. Then hard right, he plays the same two chords but with a busier strummed pattern on what sounds like a resonator. And what about the beautiful guitars on When the Bell Rings? Let the Bells Ring. This cheeky riff on the second title track. And then James Johnston, who played organ on the album, joined Mick on guitar for the tour. Remember James Johnston, the Batman Forever guy? Yet another musical polymath joins the ranks. James is an English guitarist, vocalist, violinist, keyboard player, and painter. He joined the band from 2003 to 2008, playing on Abattoir Blues, The Lyre of Orpheus, and Dig Lazarus Dig. Born in Guildford in 1966, James fronts English alt-rock band Gallon Drunk, which he formed in 1988. Alongside Gallon Drunk's 8 studio albums, James has released a handful of solo albums, as well as collaborations with Lydia Lunch, Barry Adamson, krautrockers Faust, and the legendary PJ Harvey. Just for fun, let's have a quick look at a Gallon Drunk riff, Some Fool's Mess. As far as I can tell, James played this in an open E tuning. On the 29th of January 2005, a fundraising concert was held here in Australia to raise money for those affected by the Boxing Day tsunami. Nick performed 3 songs, Red Right Hand, The Ship Song and Jack the Ripper. His accompaniment on the day was Bad Seeds mainstays Martin P. Casey on bass and Mick Harvey on drums, joined by guitarist number 30, Kim Salmon. Kim Salmon is a West Australian rocker who fronted late 70s, early 80s punk act The Scientists and played guitar in Beasts of Bourbon. He's also led a number of his own acts, Kim Salmon and the Surrealists, Kim Salmon and the Business. He's released at least 20 albums, quite aside from the Scientists and Beasts catalogues. But my personal favourite thing Kim Salmon has done is a short-lived collaboration with Dave Faulkner of the Hoodoo Gurus named Antenna. Their album Installation is a real moment in Oz rock history for me. It featured a great single called Come On Spring, which made it into the 1998 Hottest 100. The album also featured a song sung by the inimitable Chrissy Amphlett of the Divinals, Divine, which has one of the single greatest two-note Aussie guitar riffs of all time. But I digress. Look out for Chapter 4, where we get stuck into Grinder Man and Warren Ellis, talk about Guthrie Govan, George Vijestica, more on Jeffrey Lee Pierce and what's the Blondie connection, and tons more surprises.